listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author Sarah Box, where you get the inside scoop on the steps action takers and decision makers take to align their purpose to their principles and achieve their goals in business and life. We focus on the mantra, no labels, no limits, no excuses. And now, without further ado, please welcome your commanding coach with plenty of chutzpah and heart, Sarah Box.
Hi there, and welcome to this episode of the No Labels, No Limits podcast, a podcast all about shedding our limiting labels and beliefs. This week, we're joined by Joy Erickson. I'm going to tell you a few things about Joy. She learned about the Enneagram 4 years ago now, and at that time, it was for her just another personality test. And we've all taken them, the StrengthsFinder, Myers-Briggs, a bunch of personality tests. That's what it was. But she was still curious in 2019, which led her to read Ian Chron's book, Road Back to You. And you know how you read a book and you have one of those aha moments? Well, she had one and realized it was an amazing tool for real and lasting personal growth and change. And she wanted to help others find that same growth and change. In 2020, she launched her business, Forward Enneagram Coaching, after becoming certified as an Enneagram coach through Beth McCord at Your Enneagram Coach. Now, today, she helps people live their fullest lives by walking with them through discovering who they truly are at their core. Now, here's two more fun facts about Joy. She really loves essential oils. We're going to talk about that. That's relevant to our conversation today. And she's also run a 15K. So I bow down to you running the 15K, Joy. And with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really am honored to do this with you.
Well, I know from our brief pre-chat and making sure tech was actually working that the audience is going to love what you have to share. And what I didn't tell folks is that I am going to ask you a little bit more about how you got through your business and still use what you knew and grew to use through your essential oil business and the links with the Enneagram. So we'll talk more about that. And then the value of using the Enneagram, particularly today in a business setting. Yeah. But one of the things I like to ask all of our guests before we dive into their expertise and background is whether or not there's something you do every day, Joy, that keeps you living true to your own purpose and calling.
For me personally, the thing I make sure to do every day is to spend time with Jesus. So I'm very much a faith person. And so I make sure every morning I have set some time limits on my phone when it comes to certain apps and all that. So like in the morning when I wake up, I don't have the ability to open things. And so the first thing I can open is my Bible app and read the word. And then my husband and I have started using this other app we have found is very helpful. It's called Pause. It's from John Eldredge. He wrote a book recently. It's called Get Your Life Back, but this Pause app is very cool because it gives you a 1 minute, a 3 minute, a 5 minute, and a 10-minute option. Like you kind of work your way up of pausing and just some time of prayer and reflection with the Lord to help get yourself focused on the day. And then I have a reminder to do it like in the middle of the afternoon to like for a minute just to like recenter. So like that's something that I know if I don't do that daily, things are gonna be a little off center. And then I'm trying, I got off track with it last year, but I try very hard to always make sure I get some intentional movement in. Like, doesn't have to be an intense workout, maybe just some yoga, stretching, something. But I always try to make sure I do that first thing in the morning too, because if I don't, then it reflects in the rest of my day. So those two things are the things that I really, really like try to make sure I get in and stay on track with. So.
Thanks for the tips on the app. Yeah. I hadn't heard about John Eldredge's app, and I love that it's just short, right? Yeah. Or you can increase it if you want.
Yeah.
But just stepping back for a moment, and we all have that luxury of 30, honestly, even if it's just so you can go to the bathroom, right? We do take that time. We just don't go, let's just pause. So very cool. So I want to ask you to share a little bit about how you got here doing Enneagram, but I'd like for you to start back with your essential oil work. And as we were talking prior, you were talking about the neurological impacts of the senses, and specifically smell. And I do think as we go forward and we think about the Enneagram and our motivations and our triggers, all of that, there's a link. Right?
Yes, absolutely.
So bring us up to date with Joy and from her business perspective.
So in 2014 is when I was introduced to, I use Young Living essential oils. That's the brand I prefer out of all of the essential oils out there in the world. I find that their quality and all that stuff is top of the line. And with Young Living, it is a network marketing, multi-level marketing, whatever you want to call it, company. And so my friend that introduced me was very much into doing the business side of it, where I just wanted to get them to help my family stay healthier in a more natural way. But with her, she is a very, very dynamic leader, and she had a way of helping people understand how the business side of it worked without it feeling icky, because sometimes with network marketing, all that, you have those people where it does feel icky, like you're just in it to make other people money type of situation, where she wasn't like that. She was very much a motivational person about like going after your dreams and all that kind of stuff. And I kind of fell into doing the business not really on accident, but like I started using them, and then you start sharing and telling people how they're working for your family, and people want to get stuff. So it just kind of naturally happened. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll pursue doing this as a business and see what I can make of it on my own. And so I would say about 6 years or so of my life, I worked toward building that up and as a business. And in that time, I found the Enneagram through that, because with my leader, she would have us do like retreats and do personality tests and all that kind of stuff. So I think it was in 2018 is when I first found out about the Enneagram, and it was for one of the leadership retreats that she was putting on for us. They wanted to know our Enneagram number and all that kind of stuff. So I don't even remember what test I took back then. I didn't understand it. I thought it was really weird. I didn't understand the explanation. I was like, okay, like just another personality test. She's very much into the DISC test herself. So I don't know if you've heard of that one, Sarah.
I certainly have.
Yeah. And she's very well versed in it. And I really like that personality test as well. So when we got her to the retreat, they didn't ever really end up doing anything with the Enneagram. So I was just like, all right, and I think I tested I know I tested a 2 when I took it the first time. And so I remember for a while, and then I started seeing more memes and all the stuff on social media. And then I got Road Back to You. And that is when in 2019, I was like, well, I'm going to read up on this a little bit more, because some people had shared some really insightful things through it. And I was still viewing myself as a 2 at that point. And then when I read Road Back to You, I read the chapter on a 2, and I was like, yeah, I mean, yeah. And then I got to the chapter on a 9, which is what I am. And I was like weeping, because I felt like I was reading my life story. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then when I started to really dive into it from that perspective and look back at even my adventures with Young Living and how I kind of got wrapped up into the excitement of it all from the other person, because my insecurity in that respect of like wanting to matter and be a part of something was driving my wanting to build that Young Living business. It really wasn't because I wanted to build it, but I was just so enamored with being a part of something and mattering in that way to people, that's why I was building that business. And I always was hitting walls. It was a very frustrating time for me. And I always felt like disappointed in the business. And I finally, when I realized all that, is when I like really started to take a step back and be like, okay, am I really pursuing this Young Living thing as a business because it's what I want to do, or is it because I want to matter to these people that mean so much to me that if I feel like if I don't do it as a business, they're not going to care about me anymore. And when I realized that I was really doing it for the latter reason, because I wanted to matter in other people's lives, is when I realized, okay, that's not healthy for me as a person. And so that's when I kind of sat down really pursuing building a business with the oils. And I really started to look at, and I started then following like Beth McCord and a bunch of Enneagram leaders. And I heard about Beth McCord's certification program. And I told my husband, I was like, I really think I want to maybe become an Enneagram coach to help people walk through this thing that I found that's so amazing. And he's always been an encourager in the fact that he's always felt like I should be a life coach. And I was like, no, that's just, I have a really hard time with that term for some reason, even still. And I was like, no, I'm not going to be a life coach. But then when I started talking in this respect, and he's like, well, it's a tool that you can use to help people, which you've always wanted to do. And I thought the avenue to help people was going to be through Young Living and helping them with oils and all that kind of stuff. But I really want to see people's lives change at their core, not necessarily just in their health. Like the health is awesome and everybody needs to get healthier and work on living a healthy lifestyle, but that's not where real change happens. Like real change happens when people like know why they do stuff and like why they're reacting in certain ways and work on getting their minds right, you know, and living healthy in that respect. And so we made the decision to go ahead and work through the certification program and get my certification. And now I'm here, like doing a podcast like with you.
So does that
fun.
Feel, and this is a question that kind of goes back to what you're talking about, Young Living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did it feel self-driven to want to become an Enneagram coach? Or like, did you question yourself, like, am I doing this for the community only or to be valued? Or am I doing it because, wow, I see what happened for me? And neither one is right. I'm just trying to understand, because it's clear to me as an outsider that you have gained so much awareness of who you are and why you do what you do, that you're making different decisions. So I didn't know if at that time you made that shift, if you were that aware.
I was getting to that point of awareness, and I knew that I needed a change in my life because I was at a point with my Young Living business that I was really frustrated. It brought me no happiness. I felt like I was failing constantly, and I felt like I was disappointing people constantly. So I knew I needed a change in that respect anyway. And so with the Enneagram coaching, making the decision to like pursue something that was just mine, like it's just me. Like I have no downline. I have no upline. It's just me pursuing something that can help others, but no, like there's nobody underneath me relying on me to necessarily lead them into like how to build a business. Like, and there's nobody, I mean, I have, you know, my coaching, I bet like Beth McCord and their whole group or whatever, like to bounce ideas off of, but I don't have it's not like you have a direct upline leader that's supposed to guide you through. It's really about doing it on your own and finding your rhythm and your spot and your niche with Enneagram coaching. And so for that, it was really scary for me to make that decision too, because as a type 9, it is really easy to go along and get along. And so when you have people to pull you, it's easier. And so to say, no, I'm going to set that down and not really do that anymore and try to make something really my own was a really scary thing, but it was something I knew I needed to do and see what happened.
Super brave.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's scary still.
well, business, running a business can make you nervous.
Yes, it does. Very much so.
It's a brave act. I think when people talk about business, I'm going, you can keep it in the abstract, but entrepreneurs, people who are running their own business, people who have employees under them, you're constantly thinking about others. And in your case, you're thinking about those that you're going to serve and help open their lives so they can lead, right? Yeah. But if other folks are in like you were talking, the downline, upline, right? That's a whole other pressure. And for some folks, they thrive in that.
Oh, absolutely. I see it all the time. I mean, I'm still friends with all of my Young Living people because, I still use the product. And if somebody came to me and said, how do I get them? I will totally help you get them. I'm just not going to help you build it into a business because that's not where I thrive in life. And so I can send you to the resources and the people that will help you do that because there's plenty of them out there, but it's not going to be me. But I see
husband,
the people
as much
that
as you're fighting it, you are a life coach as much as you hate the term.
I know. That's the part.
So it's a takeaway. You can tell your husband he was vindicated on the podcast. Yeah.
He was right. He'll be very happy about that.
He'll be a pal. So, but it's clear that you have learned the whys behind your own 9. And I don't want to simplify the Enneagram to just say it's these 9 numbers because there are nuances around it.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. So many.
Very, very many nuances. So, but I do want to think about shifting it to the business use a bit. You said that your leader at Young Life brought it in, you did retreats and stuff, but you never had a connection to it it was complex, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so now knowing what you know, being certified and doing the work you do today, if someone were to come to you, I were to come to you and say, you know what, I want to bring this into my company, and I have a small company, maybe 50 people, and I think you should start with these people here. Well, how do I navigate that? How do you navigate that with me to make sure that we're using it in a way that people don't walk out scratching their heads saying, well, that was nice, but not very helpful?
Well, I have had the opportunity to present the Enneagram for business a couple of times, and I'm still working on honing how to present it the best way. But what I always come back to for businesses in general is that it starts with the individuals, and that I can stand up there and go through all the types and their strengths, their weaknesses, all the things. But unless they take the time to, after I leave, to do some more research on their own, to see how to use it individually first, it's not going to go anywhere. And I try to make sure that people who have asked me to do, I next week have the opportunity to do a staff thing with a local YMCA, which first the director had me come in and we talked about it, and she's going to be a part of it because she saw how it, as a group and as individuals, they needed to grow. And so that, which is this spot to be in for as a leader, is to see how, if I can help my individual team members grow personally, our team itself will grow as well. And so that's why I always try to come back to first when it comes to the Enneagram with business use, is if someone's asking me to come in and teach on it, I tell them, it's about individual change first and foremost, because this personality type is more about the why than the how. Because of most personality tests that I've ever taken, being a part of network marketing, you take all of them. Like, they're getting thrown at you all the time. And actually, my leader in Young Living, she's the one who said this to me, and it was like, oh, that's so right. Is a lot of personality tests focus on the how, like how a person's going to react, how they do their work, how they, do all the things, where the Enneagram really gets to the core of why. Why do you react that way? Why does that trigger a reaction in that respect? Why did I pursue a business in Young Living when I probably deep down knew I really didn't want to? But I know why now. And so that's what I try to make clear when people contact me about doing group work or whatever. I always make sure to say that this gets down to a person's why, the core behind it, and then we'll move on from there, and what they want me to go through and present, or if they want to go ahead and do it either way, because some people won't want to focus on that. They want to just worry about the how and not really the why. And that's sad, but it's we can't fix a problem without understanding why, is really what it comes down to.
So when you think about it, you start individually. That tells me that a leader who would be comfortable with you starting with her team or her staff or herself at the individual level also recognizes the value of knowing each person on their own, knowing their own motivations, right?
Yes.
So give us a mini snippet of what you would explain to that leader, the motivation, say they know kind of what you did initially, it's a test, it's an assessment. Differentiate what I might know of myself as I'm a 5, you're a 9. We share some similarities. We are different in many other ways. But if you had a smaller team of 7 or 8 people, and they each knew that about themselves, can you explain or share with us where they could go as a team that without knowing that it would be harder to get to? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I would say, let's use your type and my type, for example. So when I'm doing this next presentation next week, I'm focusing a lot on conflict communication and how that works as an individual. I'll go over the overview of the Enneagram and what it is and all that, but I'm not going to dive into what each wing means for each type, because that's not pertinent when it comes to business as much. What they're wanting is how to work together better. And so what I'll do is I'll say, so for a type 9 in the workplace, we want to matter and be a part of something. And so a way to encourage that is to give a 9 the opportunity to use their voice and do the work, and then be in charge of something and give them the opportunity to do that. But what you don't want to do is bring a conflict into their life in a way where they're going to feel like they don't matter. And so you have to, when you're addressing a 9 or correcting them, you have to know that that conflict in general is going to be hard for them to take, depending on where they're at personally. If they're in a really bad spot, that conflict, they're going to just think they're going to get fired, let out, kicked out the door, and might as well not come back to work the next day because they're a failure. But if you can bring grace and confidence and give them the assurance that you believe in them and that they are part of the team and that they matter, and you're wanting to help them improve in a way that will speak volumes to them versus just telling them that they did it wrong and fix it. Would be an example for like with the type 9. Now with you as a type 5, I know that you want the information, and then you need to have the time to take that information, do your work, most likely alone and away from people, and that you will come back with the work completed, and most likely it's going to be very high quality work. And then I also know that conflict with you can be very depleting. It's not that you won't take the conflict, but it's going to take energy away from you. And so after I would come and say, hey, we need to work in this area a little bit more, I need you to give you probably time to process it and realize that you probably won't talk to me for the rest of the day, but it's not because you hate me. It's just you don't have the energy for it, even though you understood why it needed to happen. But the next day you'll come in and it'll be fine. You'll have processed everything and it'll work out. And so it's individual in the fact of like, you need to know yourself enough to be confident and being like, it's okay that I'm not talking to my boss right now, or the person that I might have had that, and then I, as your coworker, need to know, like as a 9 too, if I had to come to you, and that I need to know that it's not personal. Like your withdrawing this isn't a personal attack. It is just what you need. But if I know that, then our relationship will stay good. And working together becomes easier, because if you know the nuances of your coworkers just by knowing this much about the Enneagram. I mean, yes, there's so many nuances of the Enneagram, and it's super deep, big, large, like you can go so much with it. But if you know this much about it in the workplace and each other, like knowing this much can take a team so much further than just being like, so frustrating, they just shut down when I talk to them. Like, how much better is it for a team to understand, like, yeah, she might shut down a little bit after a conversation, but they always come back and do better the next day. Or for like me as a 9, like if anybody comes to me with correction or whatever, I even as a 9 have to withdraw a little bit and take it in and then come back and be better the next day. But I also have to remember that it's not a personal attack on me, and I'm not losing the relationship, and I'm not horrible. Like,
that is so true. And honestly, I can remember I've been leading organizations, and I've had a board member tell me, staff don't feel you're accessible. I'm thinking, I'm accessible. I'm trying to do something. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? I'm responsible for this budget. We're at a deficit, blah, 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 blah. Right. My brain is running and my mouth is shut. I learned that early on. Just shut your mouth when people are talking. You may be overreacting. But it took me a long time to understand that that's just part and parcel of how I process. And you're right. I mean, if I get inundated with a ton of stuff, especially when I've had to supervise folks and someone else comes and dumps stuff like you, basically, this is the message. You have to fix that person. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, well, I was working on financials. Right? I mean, I can't task switch that fast. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then I'm thinking, okay, can you just give me a little bit of information? I'll get back to you. But I'm not talking about this right now. I cannot. But I have learned over the years to explain to people, hey, I'm shutting my door. If you need me, just come, with the glass window, wave at me. We'll talk. But otherwise, I've got to zone down. But, you're right. You can feel bad about yourself until you understand that that's just how you roll, right? And I learned how I could not stay stuck in that and make it an excuse, but to reach out, trust that I'll come back, I'll have something. But, So I think there's a grace both ways, yes?
Yeah, there's so much grace both ways. And that's what I think is so great about the Enneagram 4 businesses, is that it allows for that grace to happen both ways. Because without it, you can only go so far as a team if you don't have grace both ways. And I like what you said about it not being an excuse. It goes back to like what Beth McCord says about not using it as a sword or a shield. Like, knowing this information about your team doesn't give you a way to just attack them or a way to shield yourself from whatever's happening. It is a way to work together and harmonize more and move forward, and like a gear, like working together to move. Otherwise you just get stuck and there's something in the way, and that's when teams fall apart, or when, and it can be devastating when you feel like everything's on all gears, and then it's like the wheels fall off and you don't know why, but it's because you have a certain amount of grace, and then you get hit the breaking point, and to know where to go from there is crucial in business.
And it's different for each personality and their own, and our own backstories, what we bring to, they're all filters for how we respond. So I may have the same quote unquote type as another 5, but our reactions will be different.
Yes.
And our motivations will be different. So that's important for folks to know, that what is great is it doesn't box you in. It's not like you are forever this.
Right.
You are somehow flawed and no good. And that's not what the Enneagram is about. The other caution, while we're on that sword thing, is I had a colleague who is expert working with teams. She uses different tools, but she said, and she studied the Enneagram, but she says she's been on Facebook groups where people make snarky comments like, oh, that's just whatever. Like they might say about me, oh, that's just her being a 5, right? Not appropriate, not okay, not appropriate. So if people are using that in a team, like, well, that's just Joy being a 9, what would you expect? That's not grace, and that's not okay.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. So, well, I think it's important we don't hurt people in the effort to learn about ourselves, because it can be uncomfortable to learn about yourself and your vulnerabilities and see, but there are also paths to growing. Yeah. Right. And so it's not on us. I mean, we have clear paths to get stronger for each of us that we can pursue, especially before we decide to start throwing rocks at other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I do have a question for you, and we talked a little bit about this early on. I was asking you what essential oil you were using today, and then we were talking about the sensory pieces, but also that you could go through. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to do this today, but given a number, a personality type, you would be able to think through, like, okay, when they're feeling this way, like maybe particularly vulnerable for whatever their personality is, that there might be a really sound match with an essential oil to help either ground them or get them going. Could you just give us a little bit about the science, and then like 2 of your examples of that? Because I thought it was particularly interesting. Yeah.
So the awesome thing about the human body is that it's just created so amazing. And so we all have a sense of smell. And with that it's called the olfactory system. So the sense of smell is connected to the brain. And it is the only one of the 5 senses that is scientifically proven to be connected to memory and pathways in the brain when it comes to that. So when you have a certain perfume that you smell and it might remind you of your grandma, or the smell of a certain dessert brings you back to a time where you had it, or a certain cologne reminds you of your crush in high school. Like, That is because there is a neurological pathway that occurred with that sense of smell, with that memory. And so it's a very strong connection. But with that, you can use the sense of smell to help invoke feelings and emotions in your life. So that is one of the amazing tools with essential oils, is the sense of smell. So today for me as a type 9, I can get very nervous about what I have to say and not be very confident in what I have to say mattering to people. And I have grown leaps and bounds in this area on my own, but in certain situations, I know that I need a little boost. And so what I do is I was using Valor essential oil from Young Living as we were getting started, because this smell helps bring up feelings of courage and confidence inside of myself. I can't reference all of the science behind it that they have done or research, but everybody has Google, you can Google. But the certain oils that are in this blend, especially with frankincense oil, they have found to, when they study it, they have found that it helps turn on certain things in the brain. And so I was like, well, before I do really my first ever podcast interview, I should probably put a little something in my hands and just smell it for a minute to help invoke some extra confidence in myself. And so it helps me. We have other blends like Stress Away that I could have used to bring my stress levels down. And it's just an amazing tool. So when it comes to certain Enneagram types and their stress and growth or all that, well, I'll use my son as an example. I was telling Sarah this at the beginning. I have inklings that my son is also a type 5 when it comes to the Enneagram. And he gets he has always had a very anxious side to him. So sometimes it can be a toss-up. Maybe he is a 6 with a really strong 5 wing. I'm not sure. But when he was younger, his anxiety was very strong. And so when we had just started using Young Living, I had heard that for him, that oils that come from trees especially are very grounding to people. It gives you very much a feeling of groundedness, calming, all that. And some people can be oh, the word grounding, that sounds so hippie. I'm I'm sorry that I have a little hippie dippiness in me. Me too. It just is what it is. But, they're well, trees have roots and are grounded into the ground. And so I had read up on an oil called vetiver, which is a type of tree, plant, and orange oil out of all things. And so I made a little roller bottle of this vetiver and orange, and we called it his focus blend. And the difference I saw in him, just putting a little bit on his chest for him to, and in his hands for him to smell, was night and day. He would, and then, at that time, let's see, it was 8 years ago. So he was 7, 8 years old. When a 7 and 8 year old boy is coming to you and asking you to put that oil on because he himself is feeling the difference inside of himself when he smells it, you know that there's something there. And so, vetiver, or even just frankincense oil, which is another very grounding, calming oil, is something that I would highly recommend to any type 5 or type 6 that might get a little overwhelmed when a lot of stuff gets thrown at them and they need to take a moment, put it with the pause app. Take the pause app, put a little frankincense on your hands, smell that while you're taking a moment. It's amazing how it does just calm you. And I've just experienced it personally so much. And I know people are skeptical. Like there's always skeptics. There's skeptics about the Enneagram and how this tool works. And there's definitely skeptics when it comes to essential oils and using them. But it is a tool that I will forever use. Like I'm so grateful that these products are in my family's life. But so like with which oil works best for each type, some of it's situational. I was telling Sarah at the beginning too, like Valor you can use for any type, really. Like I used it today for boost of confidence. My husband, who is a type 1, he uses it because it has a little bit more of a groundingness. So like for a type 1 who sometimes deals with that inner critic that's always talking, and I always tell type 1s, let's name it, because it just makes it funny and uses the situation. So my husband named his Chad. We just came up with it. I don't know. But when Chad starts really yelling at him, he'll get out like a Valor oil to like help bring it back and like calm it down, and then he'll yell at him, which also is just funny. So it helps diffuse the situation. But like even so, like I'm 9, so I use Valor for a little confidence. My husband uses it to help bring a calmness and a confidence in his decisions and not listen to his inner critic as much. A 3 might use Valor to really boost their confidence. Like a type 3 that is already like super confident person, like Valor will just add an extra level to that. And I just think that it's a great tool that anybody can use. But then when you couple it with the understanding of the Enneagram, and you can be like, hey, why don't you try this out for a little while and see if this helps you get through that a little bit more. It'll be a very interesting thing. I have started to dive into it a little, but it's like one thing at a time. I can't overwhelm myself.
Well, when you're ready to dive in more, I'd love to dive in with you and learn.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I do think, and I'm good with it. I've been around long enough that my husband jokes to people at the store when they ask, do you want that in a bag? He says, we'll just carry it. My wife's an old hippie, right? I don't mind being called a hippie. I do mind him continually referring to me as an old hippie, but it's true. So
that's great.
But that's just a kind way of saying, you know what, I pay attention to stuff and care about it. But I also respect your knowledge and learning. I don't know the details of why it works. I do know the effects. When someone who's knowledgeable like you says, use this for right now, right? And I'm going, all right. I'm appreciative that they've done their research and thinking on my behalf, considering what my needs are. So you have a very gracious offer for anybody who comes to you through this podcast and wants to have your services. Could you share that with our folks?
Yes. If I can remember what I put in my email.
Okay, I'll tell you what you offered.
Thank you.
Offered... It was well done. You're so cute. You've given so much value already today. I kind of feel bad about telling you what you're even offering more value. But
that's okay. I'm offering
okay. So what Joy is offering, if anybody comes to her and you mention to her that you heard her through this podcast, she will give you 20% off a coaching service.
Yes. Yep. I will do that. And that's the number I thought I had said, but then I was like, was it? Oh man, it's been.
You know what? Life is great. We don't have to be perfect.
It was great. Yeah.
That's why we have email.
20% off. Yeah. They can. I think you'll probably put it like how to get in touch with me in show notes or something along those lines. So they can email me, which is joy@dreamforward.co, and then my new website is almost done. We're almost on the finishing touches of it. So they will be able to contact me through that once we get it finished, but it's dreamforward.co is the website. So hopefully we'll have that done and up and running by the 1st. That's the goal, is to get it done by February 1st. Yep.
Then it'll be up and running. I will promise you we will run this episode after the 1st of February.
That would be great. But yes, so that will be the other way that they can get in touch with me, or they can just find me.
Okay, so it'd be dreamforward.co and joy@dreamforward.co.
Yeah. Yeah. And that email is already working, and I use it all the time. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's how we connected. So,
yeah.
Okay. With that, Joy, I want to really thank you for being a guest. And had you not told me, I would not have thought this was your first podcast.
Oh, really? That's good.
You gave so much great information. You're so personable. And I can just guess, since I'm not a client, how much value you add to your clients because of your deep thinking and ability to connect with folks.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. And to the rest of our listeners, thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week with another great guest. So remember, come back and learn more.
You've been listening to the No Labels, No Limits podcast with best-selling author, change agent, and strategic vision coach, Sarah Box. You can grab the show notes and find out how to work with Sarah at sarahbox.com/No Labels, No Limits podcast. We'd love this podcast to reach as many people as possible. So please remember to rate, leave a 5-star review, and share the podcast with someone you think would get value from this conversation. Until next time, keep taking those daily action steps to align your purpose to your principles and achieve your goals in business and life.